The Russian Revolution was a period of political and social revolution that took place in the former Russian Empire and began during the First World War, commencing in 1917 with the fall of the House of Romanov and concluding in 1923 with the Bolshevik establishment of the Soviet Union. The Russian Revolution was a series of two revolutions, the first of which overthrew the imperial government and the second placed the Bolsheviks in power. Beginning with the February Revolution in 1917, the first revolt focused in and around the then capital Petrograd, now known as St. Petersburg. After major military losses during the war, the Russian army had reverted to mutiny. In response, members of the Russia's parliament, called the Duma, assumed control of the country and went on to form the Russian provincial government. This government was dominated by the interests of prominent capitalists as well as the Russian nobility and aristocracy. The Russian Revolution was a watershed moment of the 20th century, one which dictated and shaped the world we live in today and the future of Europe for almost 100 years. In today's episode of History Simplified, we take a look at the causes and factors that led to the Russian Revolution and established the first major communist country in the world, the Soviet Union. The Russian emperors were despotic. They did not consider themselves responsible to anyone. Tsar Alexander I was considered to be a little liberal, but the revolt of Poland and other external circumstances forced him to adopt the reactionary policy again. Tsar Alexander II also adopted a liberal attitude and emancipated the serfs, but the opposition of the feudal chiefs pushed him back to adopt the reactionary policy. During this period, terrorists assassinated Tsar Alexander II. Tsar Alexander III learned from the death of his father that the emperor's authority could be secured only through a harsh policy of ruthless suppression. Nicholas II also followed this policy, but because of the revolution of 1905, to placate the reformists, he had to announce the election of Duma. However, he did not allow the Duma to become a real representative of the people and established the reactionary rule once again. During the last years of his reign, Rasputin became all-powerful and brought disaster to the empire. His opponents put him to death in 1916. By the middle of the 19th century, responsible governments had been established in the major states of Europe. But in Russia, those who opposed the administration were severely subjugated and punished. The increasing atrocities of the Tsar intensified people's discontent and opposition against him. In the beginning of the 20th century, Russia was an agricultural country, but the condition of the peasants there was very deplorable. The emancipation of the serfs by Tsar Alexander II in 1861 did not bring much change in their condition. By the end of the 19th century, 20,000 big landlords in Russia possessed 180 million acres of land, whereas more than 10 million peasants possessed only 190 million acres. One-third of the peasants were landless and worked on the land of the landlords. They had to pay several types of taxes, which made their economic condition miserable. In 1902, the peasants of Kharkov and Poltava revolted. The Revolutionary Socialist Party took advantage of this situation and provoked them against the administration. Peasants' revolt broke out in southwest of Ukraine, Caucasus, Poland, and the Volga River zone in 1905. A conference of all the representatives of peasants was held the same year in Moscow, where it was decided to form a Russian Peasants' Union. Consequently, in the law of 1906, every farmer was given the right to withdraw his land from the commune. The Land Enactment of 1910 gave the peasants the right to consolidate their lands. These laws benefited only a few peasants, and the problem of landless peasants remained unsolved. These conditions made the peasant revolt even more viable. In the Russo-Japanese War that was fought in 1904-1905, Russia was defeated at the hands of Japan. When there was a chaos in the government, the workers took resort to strikes and the peasants expressed their discontent through riots. On Saturday, January the 22nd, 1905, about 150,000 workers under the leadership of Father Gapon staged a demonstration before the Tsar for the acceptance of their political and industrial demands. After a peaceful demonstration, when they were marching forward, the soldiers of the Tsar attacked these unarmed people and killed nearly 130 of them. With a view to pacifying the situation, the Tsar announced administrative reforms on 30th October 1905. People were granted freedom of speech and expression and of forming associations. This announcement of October 30th is considered an important step in the direction of constitutional government in Russia. But as soon as the discontent subsidized, the Tsar made Duma the first house of the parliament and constituted a second house under the name of Imperial Council, whose members were to be nominated by the emperor himself. Not only this, when in the elections held in March 1906, the conservatives failed to get a majority in the Duma, the Tsar dissolved it on its very first session. The second session of the Duma held in March 1907 was also dissolved likewise. Now people became absolutely restless to see their rights, which they had won as a result of the revolution of 1905, being snatched away in this ruthless manner. Industrial revolution had taken place in the major states of Western Europe, but Russia was still an agricultural country. Industrialization gained momentum during the times of Alexander III. Thousands of landless peasants thronged the industrial centers in search of jobs. The industrialists exploited their miserable and helpless condition. Their wages were so low they could not make ends meet. The Revolutionary Socialist Party exploited this discontent and preached the principles of socialism among the workers. The principles of this party greatly allured the peasants, and they prepared themselves for a prolonged struggle. The workers' strike started from 1902-03. The revolution of 1905 also began with workers' rally. The government tried to improve the condition of the workers after 1905. Health insurance and accident benefits were introduced in 1912. But these reforms did not alleviate the grievances of the workers. The social condition of Russia at this time was similar to that of France before 1789. The whole Russian society was divided into two classes. The first class, which enjoyed all the rights, comprised favorite aristocrats of the Tsar. This class was very affluent and had grabbed most of the important offices as well as a very large portion of the land. The other class were bereft of all the rights. It comprised peasants and workers, whose economic condition was extremely miserable. They were tortured by the aristocracy. Thus, the Russian society suffered from glaring social and economic disparity. Liberal ideas from the Western European countries had been penetrating Russia for the past few years, and the Tsar and his reactionary officials left no stone unturned in strangling them at its core. But even then, they flourished. Russian novelists such as Tolstoy, Turgenev, and Dostoevsky drew people's attention towards the shortcomings of Russian life. Their ideas brought about political awakening among the people, and the educated classes began to demand political rights. Besides them, the socialist ideas of Karl Marx, Maxim Gorky, and Bakunin influenced the peasants and workers. The Russian Revolution became the site for many instances of symbolism, both physical and non-physical. Communist symbolism is perhaps the most notable of this time period, such as the debut of the iconic hammer and sickle as a representation of the October Revolution in 1917. Eventually becoming the official symbol of the USSR in 1924. Although the Bolsheviks did not have extensive political experience, Their portrayal of the revolution itself as both a political and symbolic order resulted in communism's portrayal as a messianic faith, formerly known as communist messianism. Portrayals of notable revolutionary figures such as Lenin were done in iconographic methods, equating them similarly to religious figures, though religion itself was banned in the USSR and groups such as Russian Orthodox Church were persecuted. The revolution ultimately led to the establishment of the future Soviet Union as an idiocracy. However, the establishment of such a state came as an ideological paradox, as Marx's ideals of how a socialist state ought to be created were based on the formation being natural and not artificially incited by means of revolution as the one done by Lenin. Leon Trotsky said that the goal of socialism in Russia would not be realized without the success of the world revolution. A revolutionary wave caused by the Russian Revolution lasted until 1923. But despite initial hopes for success in the German Revolution of 1918-1919, the short-lived Hungarian Soviet Republic and others like it, no other Marxist movement at the time succeeded in keeping power in its hands. The Russian Revolution, led by Vladimir Lenin, showed the world, which was still reeling under archaic monarchies, how well-planned and well-executed people's movements can become successful and change the complete socio-political structure of a nation, no matter its past and power. It was a momentous event in the early years of the 20th century, one which impacts the political structure of Europe still today, and the world as a whole. Without the revolution, Russia could never have become the superpower that we knew after the Second World War. The rise and the eventual fall of the Soviet Union will be written about for years and years to come. I hope you found this video very interesting. I aim to bring more such important chapters in Indian and world history in impartial and critical way to you. Do leave a like on this video if you think this is informative, and subscribe to the History Simplified channel. Share this with your friends and family so that more and more people are made aware of our history and how that can affect socio-political scenario even today. Stay informed, stay curious, and I will see you on the next one.